Their conclusion is very simple. We know why human being marriages last only about 3 years or so. That's the longest two gorillas can tolerate each other. Now, therefore, Mr. President, we recommend that divorce be an automatic inclusion in any marriage statement, and they're just being logical. But you see, the average person confuses logic with truth. And I mean scientists do it, theologians do it, philosophers do it. Logic and truth are two different things. You've read Agatha Christie, haven't you?
Yeah.
Detective stories, you know. You've watched Hollywood movies. Now, they're all logical. Well, most of them are, right? But when you watch those movies, Agatha Christie detective stories, she was a fabulous top seller all her life because her stories were 100% logical. None of them were true. Logic and truth are two different things. So if you pick the wrong starting point, from then on you can be 100% logical. You'll just be wrong. It's the starting point, not your logic. So that's why it's important when we look at this issue, if students are going to behave properly in the future and have the right rules about tomorrow, they need to be taught the right beginning point, because after that, their logic will flow automatically in the right direction.
There's some birds that are just nesting with the same partner each year. Well, we could take that as a model of a good family and so on. I wonder why scientists push whatever it fits their agenda of, it looks to me, to deliberately to destroy societies.
Yeah, well, they do. I mean, if you come to Australia, we've got some spiders in which the female mates with the male and then she eats him. Now, the feminists love that example, right? And the male chauvinist pigs, they love the horse because the stallion beats up any of the women, right, and he gets what he wants. Now, you could reach any conclusion based on that. Of course, you're not a horse. You're not even a goat, right? So it doesn't matter what the billy goat or the nanny goat is doing. You're a human being. So the question is, what is the right role model for the human being? And again, that gets to you. In the beginning, God made them male and female, and that's the reason for marriage. Start anywhere else, and you'll have a wrong conclusion. But it brings up a point I made in a previous program, because you use scientists, and why aren't they looking at these other examples and said they're just picking what they want? In reality, the examples they're picking are related to the database they believe that they're allowed to have. Remember I mentioned about the Science Teachers Association saying science includes explanations without reference to God. So what you've got is here is a big box. This is the information we can use. We can study pigeons, we can study spiders, we can study apes and monkeys and gorillas. Here is the other box called God. We can't study that. Now, the fact is, when you have a look at this world, even if you're an ardent evolutionist and you want to be supposedly logical, you're trying to explain how creationists evolved, right? So therefore, creationists are data, and you're trying to explain where marriage came from. So marriage is data, and in the long run, you're trying to explain where religion came from. So all religion is data. But the trouble is, religion includes a knowledge of God, and that's already ruled out. So therefore, they're dishonest right from the start. So we shouldn't be surprised if you take a dishonest approach, you end up with a fallacious conclusion.
Exactly. I am little Johnny. Comes off the zoo. Sees the sign. Just visited the relatives. Meets Mr. Mackay. Mr. Mackay is with a track. I'm a creationist. I'm a scientist. I'm giving answers, providing answers, differences between humans and apes. Little Johnny is all confused. He tries to talk to his mother, saying, Mommy doesn't understand. Mr. John is around. Help Mommy. Is there any difference between little Johnny and little Billy the ape in the cage? She's just been told that we are just this little bit of different of porcupines and apes and whatever sort of DNA mapping genome. Sort this out for me, please.
Of course,
little Mommy.
We can go into technical details in DNA, but let's take Mummy's helpful approach first, because little Johnny doesn't know about DNA.
Great.
Right? Mummy doesn't know too much about DNA.
This is why she's confused.
Yes, that's right. But in reality, when you visit the chimp cage, you can see obviously a few very important differences. We visit them in the zoo. They don't visit us at the zoo, right? So there's the first difference.
And that is not even DNA.
It's the consequence of the DNA, right? Though, however, so obviously, even if you said we're 98.4% the same as the chimpanzee, obviously that 1.6% means we build zoos and they don't. We ask questions about chimps. They ask no questions about us. We have a school to learn about chimps. There's no school in the zoo for chimps, right? It just doesn't exist. In fact, if you have a closer look, you'll notice that they can hold on upside down to a branch, holding on with their feet. Now, if you were to swing upside down in the trees, Romulus, holding a branch between your toes, I mean, look at the size of you. The tree would go crack and you'd hear, ah, and then splot. You wouldn't do it a second time.
Because now the splothing would be very...
Well, no, not the splothing, but the problem is the fact they've actually got 4 hands. We call them feet, but they've actually got 4 thumbs. And thumbs are on hands, and you and I have got 2 thumbs. We've got 2 feet and 2 hands. Now, the difference this makes, an awful lot of things flow that Mum can see and little Johnny could see if only they'd take the evolutionist glasses off. You see, if you've got 4 hands, you can't actually stand upright for very long. It may be very handy to be able to hold onto a tree branch and spring with your feet or with your hands, whatever, but in reality, certain things flow on which you can't do. Illustration, go outside this studio after we've finished, Romulus, flip up on your hands and walk from here to Bucharest, right? You will soon find that hands are for holding, feet are for walking. Now, we haven't even got into cytosine, guanine, adenine, thymine and DNA yet. You don't need to. All of these are the expression of the differences between monkeys and apes and chimpanzees. Therefore, they walk on all 4s because that's the only way you can do it if you've got 4 hands to spread the weight so you don't bust your hand. Now, as a result, think carefully. You and I, we stand upright and our head, our eyes are at right angles. But if a chimpanzee did that, he's walking on all 4s, he can certainly see the ants between his legs. But he hits every tree that's in front of him, right? So you'd end up with even dumber chimpanzees as a result. So therefore, their head is swiveled forwards and it actually hangs off their backbone rather than sitting on it. So their eyes can see forward. Now, if you're going to hang your head off your backbone, the shape of your backbone will alter to balance. So if you have a look at a chimpanzee backbone, it's a nice, very profound S-shaped curve. Now, if little Johnny had a backbone like that, Mum would whip him off to the doctor real fast, right? And if he didn't have a tail and he didn't have 4 hands, the doctor would be very worried. But if he was a chimp, that's normal, that's okay. So therefore, there's lots of simple things you can point out without going into the fact that it's only last year where they really, for the first time, actually studied chimpanzee chromosome number 22. Okay, point, all of those statements about being 98.4% the same that have been made since 1990 were fallacious. Because when we studied chimpanzee chromosome number 22 and studied the nearest similar to one in human beings, have a guess how different they were. 80% different. That's how different, and that's the only chromosome we've really studied in detail. So if one of them is 80% different, I think we now know why they swing upside down in trees and we don't. And I think we now know why we have schools and they don't. The difference is actually incredible.